Boom! And just like that, the U.S. Department of Justice dropped over 3 million pages, thousands of videos, and heaps of images from the J-App investigations, and half the internet stood up and said, wait, what? Before you hit X out of panic or outrage, let's unpack what's actually going on here and why the world feels like something flipped the lights on in a room that's been dark for decades. Thanks to the most recent Epstein Files Transparency Act, the DOJ had put a ton of files out in the open. Emails, images, memos, and more. But here's the twist. Most of the truly explosive content is either redacted or so buried that you need Sherlock's magnifying glass to find it. And yet, even with the black boxes everywhere, the scale of the release has so many people talking. Not because of its bombshells, but because so many people thought it would just never happen. And I find it curious because we know that the black box is so symbolic, and now black boxes everywhere. Isn't that curious? Here's the spoiler-free version. The files have people's names, correspondence, and photos of Epstein with famous, powerful figures. But this is important. Inclusion does not mean guilt. The DOJ itself has said that several times. Several entries are from unverified tips or unproven claims, but still, some names spark reactions, such as, of course, the politicians, billionaires, royals, celebrities, and yes, some media mentions even touch on Britney Spears, and adjacent coverage about the celebrity names cropping up in various high-profile legal news. My golly, isn't that madness? Listen close. Britney wasn't at the center of any specific sex trafficking story connected to Epstein in these DOJ files, but her name has come up connected to this. Her name has come up in the public discussion because she's one of the few celebrities who has publicly talked about feeling manipulated and controlled by the industry, including trafficking themes like "I'm a slave for you," and these other themes show up again and again in her conservatorship testimony. The context means her fans see the Epstein stuff as, they feel like, hey, she was pointing to the machine that protects powerful people long before this dump even happened. This isn't about claiming Britney was in those files for criminal reasons. It's about how people are connecting the dots between power control, exploitation, using Britney's voice as a cultural flashpoint, as it should be. All hail the Queen. Now here's where it gets spicy. A lot of people are online saying this recent document dump is the first real crack in the old elite secrecy model where power and money means untouchable, and not without reason. Critics across the political spectrum are calling the release incomplete, redacted, or even a partial cover-up, especially when survivor names got released while many powerful names are still hidden. So yes, the public mood has shifted, and people are tired of private justice, closed doors, and names kept in a vault while stories stay buried. It's not that we've seen everything. It's finally, we're seeing something. And for a lot of people, that's fuel for a real conversation about power and accountability. When we pull back the curtain and you see the emails between Epstein and political VIPs, or you see the government say we released everything, but then half the documents are missing, you laugh. Not because it's funny, but because it's how we keep from crying. We're watching a slow motion shakeup where the rule, you can't keep secrets if you're rich and powerful, is getting challenged in plain sight. It's wild, it's messy, and it's the news cycle now. The most reassuring takeaway is that there's more to come. There will be debates, edits, and maybe lawsuits. And yes, probably more document dumps. And many of you already know, but you clever, beautiful people out there have figured out how to redact the redactions yourself. And might I say, I'm impressed. But the bigger point is this. People will no longer take secrecy for granted. The veil that once hid boardrooms, backrooms, and power players is tearing. And that's why everyone is watching so closely. So if you're feeling shocked or confused or fed up, it's totally understandable. Don't worry, you're certainly not alone. Just remember that the truth is messy, but shining a light on it is the first step. Please don't forget, hit like, sub, and hit that bell. I really do appreciate it. It's free and it really does help a lot. And this story is far from over. Every society has a comforting story that it tells itself, that the vulnerable are protected, the institutions exist to help, that when something horrific happens, it's an exception, not a pattern. But history keeps interrupting that story again and again and again. Today, I'm not here to accuse individuals. We are simply here to ask much more outgoing question. What kind of system keeps producing the same nightmares? Across history and across borders, one thing remains consistent. Children without power, children without parents, and children placed in institutions are always at the highest risk, such as orphanages, residential schools, elite-sponsored charities, private compounds framed as education, aid, or opportunity. Many of these places are founded with noble language. Some even do real good. And yet time after time, investigations reveal real abuse, trafficking, cover-ups, and silence. Not everywhere and not always, but often enough that coincidence stops being convincing for the masses. There is an uncomfortable truth, and it is this. Institutions that centralize vulnerable children also centralize access to them, and access is power. In modern times, power rarely looks like chains or uniforms. It looks like philanthropy. It looks like foundations and schools and global initiatives. High-profile figures often attach their names to humanitarian causes involving children, education, care, and rescue. And again, many of these projects genuinely do good and help people. But here's the question that nobody ever asks out loud. Why do scandals involving elite-linked institutions so often end quietly? Why are the warning signs ignored for years and whistleblowers are discredited? Why does accountability evaporate once money, influence, and political connection appear? This isn't about one person. It's about how power insulates itself. Back to our subject that still feels radioactive. J.Ep is not a theory. His crimes are documented, his connections documented. What remains is unresolved how he operated with such freedom for so long, across borders despite repeated warnings. Some researchers and former intelligence insiders speculate that Ep may have functioned as an asset. This is not yet proven, but it has been discussed in intelligence history because intelligence agencies have historically used morally repugnant tactics. Ding, ding, ding. Blackmail has been a very real tool of statecraft, Assets are sometimes allowed to continue crimes to protect bigger interests. Disgusting. And even if partially true, the implications are chilling. It would mean the system didn't fail. It worked as designed and just not for us. If powerful people can exploit children with minimal consequences, what does that say about the nation that it claims to defend freedom? It suggests something deeply unsettling. That morality is conditional, that justice is negotiable, that some lives are treated as expendable in the name of influence, leverage, and stability. Empires don't usually collapse from invasion, they rot from moral exceptions. Every time society says this is necessary about something so indefensible, it takes one step closer to becoming unrecognizable. Here's the hardest part. You don't fix this by trusting harder. You fix it by removing blind trust entirely. Real solutions look unglamorous. Radical transparency in childcare institutions. Independent civilian oversight with subpoena power. No sealed settlements involving crimes against minors. Whistleblower protections that actually protect. Ending private control over vulnerable populations. Treating child exploitation as a national security threat, not a PR problem. And most importantly, no person, no foundation, no donor gets immunity, ever. No one is above the law. No one. If everything feels staged, filtered, and curated, that's because power thrives on confusion. Smoke isn't meant to hide everything, just enough to make people doubt themselves. The way out isn't paranoia, it's clarity. Ask boring questions. Follow paper trails. Demand systems don't rely on good people, but on hard limits. Because the moment society decides some horrors are acceptable for stability, it's already lost its soul. A reminder, my dear ones, this video isn't about fear. It's about responsibility. If we want a future that doesn't keep repeating the same atrocities, we have to stop pretending monsters look like monsters. Sometimes they look like donors. Sometimes they look like saviors. Sometimes they look like well-known YouTubers. Sometimes, like institutions we were told never to question. And sometimes the bravest thing a society can do is look directly into the mirror and refuse to lie.